Hey everybody, how you doing? This is about to be a really fun video. I haven't quite figured out exactly what I'm going to title this video yet. It's going to be either something like Stop It with the FUDD Lore, or maybe the title of this video will be Does Bullet Weight Matter, or does the weight of the projectile matter? So if you've ever DM'd me on Facebook, on Instagram, you know I answer every single message every single day. I spend hours, literally every day I spend hours reading, responding to all the comments on YouTube, every single DM on Facebook and Instagram. Normally, if you message me, I will message you right back. People every day. Oh, I didn't think you would really message. I really message. Try me after this video. Comment on this video. Ask me a question. I'll answer you back. That's one of the ways I try to set my show apart is, hey, call me, ask me a question, I will answer you back. Nobody else does that. It's just another way I try to set apart our show. I'm just a real dude doing real things. But here's what we're talking about today. Does projectile weight matter? So one of the main questions that people ask me every day in those DMs and comments, hey, I just picked up a Savage Axis 243, what's going to work best in it? Well, my answer to that question is, or some people ask the question, what should I hunt with in it? What ammo should I pick up? Well, my answer to that question is typically whichever ammo that your particular rig likes the best, the one that groups the best. But a lot of people ask that question. Say it's a 243. Should I deer hunt with the 80 grain or with a 95 grain or 100 grain 243? Well, it comes back again. You need to test a few of them and see which yours groups the best. I can't really give you the perfect answer. I could answer it, I hope that this one groups the best because that's the one that I would rather hunt with. But if that groups terribly, then you're going to have to try a lighter one or a different factory loading or whatever. So real quick, I'm just going to run through some numbers of 30-06 and 223. Now, this goes back to I said we're going to address some of the FUDD lore. For example, if I had $1 for every time someone told me they like to hunt with 220 grain 30-06 core locks because it has the most energy, I could be retired. It doesn't have the most energy. There's more 30-06 rounds with lighter projectiles that have more energy. Now, 220 grain might have the most penetration. The heavier, slower rounds, kind of like a 45-70, will travel through a lot more material. If you use that as an argument, depending on the projectile, there can be some truth to that. But if you tell me you hunt with 220 grain 30-06 because it has the most energy, that's not true. But let's jump into the numbers real quick. So just for sake of example, I grabbed some stuff off the shelf here. I've done videos on every single one of these if you want to go check them out. So a Remington Premier Match in a 69 grain, that's a good projectile, depending on what you're trying to do. Hey, this Premier AccuTip 50 grain varmint round, that's really good, depending on what you're trying to do. I've got video up, us doing prairie dog stuff with this in 223. I've got videos doing group tests of this stuff. That'd be a good one for doing some longer range target plinking. So, whatever you're trying to do is going to dictate what you should start off with first. Just for example of 30-06, I grabbed some off the shelf here. I got 172 grain Premier Long Range. Ooh, man, that's a good one. This is the Spear Impact projectile, 172 grain. I literally have some of these on my desk that we pulled from a blue wildebeest and a zebra. That's a fantastic projectile. If you haven't seen those hunting videos, check them out. Then we got a 150 grain core lock and a 180 grain core lock tipped. Now, when we look at the charts, the ballistics and the numbers of this 180 grain core lock tipped are pretty awesome. But let's look at some charts We're going to talk about drop. We're going to talk about energy. We're going to go through all this real quick, using 223 and 30-06 as some examples, and just look at some numbers. Check this out. All right, so does your selection of 223 or 30-06 or whatever matter? Yes, it does, and it depends on what you're trying to do. But again, at the end of the day, generally speaking, the one that groups best for you out of your rig is going to be the best choice. But for the sake of talking about 30-06, I got color-coded charts we're about to look at for drop, also for energy. So, hey, check it out, 30-06. I've got, what, 6 different loadings here. 3 of the core locks. 150 grain, 180 grain, and the 220 grain. And then the core lock tipped, which is this stuff right here, in the 150, 165, and 180 grain. So green is what drops the least. Red is what drops the fastest. So say you're out with your 30-06, you're shopping at the ammo stand, and you're thinking, man, I want the flattest one I can get. Well, out of these 6, that would be the bright green. I've got this graph out to 600 yards. I guess it's a table, not a graph. The 150 grain core lock tipped is the flattest. Some of them by far, some of them not so much by far. If you look at the ballistic coefficients in the very first column, those tipped rounds have a higher BC. But yeah, the muzzle velocity, the projectile weight, and the BC, it's all that math calculation to tell you which one's going to drop the fastest. So, does it matter? From a drop perspective, if you're hunting 300 yards and in, that doesn't really matter so much. So generally speaking, for most deer hunting cartridges, you sight in at 100 yards, it's going to drop 3 to 6 inches at 200 yards. At 300 yards, it's going to drop somewhere 12 to 16 inches. I said that. Now let me look at my chart here. Yeah, 12 inches to 16, and that 220 heavy one's dropping 22 inches at 300 yards. But does that really matter? Not really. Not until you get past out to 300 yards. Then some of them start to significantly drop faster than others. But hey, y'all can freeze this. Check it out. Look at the numbers. Energy. Now, I told you a bunch of people over the years have told me they use the 220 grain 30-06 because it has the most energy. No, it doesn't. Just pulling up the chart here quick. At the muzzle, out of all these 30-06 selections that I picked for us to talk about, the 180 grain, which I think I have it here. Yes, the 180 grain, core lock tipped, has the most energy at every distance I have charted here, out to 600 yards. The 220 grain is borderline the lowest amount of energy at any given distance. It's actually the 180 grain. For a lot of those, it stays the absolute bottom. But hey, even the one with the least amount of energy has 1,000 foot-pounds of energy out to 350 yards. So from an energy perspective, if you're hunting with 30-06 at 300 yards and in, does that really matter? Well, that's opening up a whole nother can of worms. Most people are deer hunting 300 yards and in. I would say a majority are even well within that, much closer than that. To which point, I'm more worried about, can you place that projectile exactly where you want it than mega energy off the charts. I've taken a lot of deer with a lot of things. I've taken deer with 22-250. I've taken deer with 45-70. Lots of stuff in between. Then we're opening up a whole nother can of worms, like I said, even talking about placement. But that's not what this video is about. I just wanted to show you some numbers real quick of the 30-06. You guys can freeze this, take a look at it. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your favorite is. So let's have the same discussion real quick. I don't want this to be a too terribly long video. 223. So I've got on here 45 grainers up to 77 grainers. If you look at the more match style stuff, it's typically a heavier, high BC projectile. The super fast, super light stuff, that's going to be typically the varmint stuff. But yeah, let's just look at the numbers real quick. Might surprise you, it might not. From a drop perspective, this is drop in inches. Which one wins? Hey, in this case, it's a 50 grain Premier AccuTip V. 3410 feet per second at the muzzle, and it stays flattest on this to 600 yards, and that's as far as I did the numbers for this one. Which one drops the quickest? Well, it starts off as the 77 grain, that's the heaviest one, but then it switches over to the UMC 55 grain, dropping the most at 600 yards. So it's all just a factor of the speed and the weight. Yeah, you guys know what I'm saying. Then we talk about energy from 223, which this one's a little bit different from 30-06. 30-06, you know, it's got plenty of energy. It's a big game hunting round. 223, it's a little bit different discussion. A lot lighter projectile. So it was really interesting for me to figure out these numbers and just have them in front of me, because I've never really done a deep dive specifically on 223 from an energy perspective. But check it out. What has the most energy? Of these 6 that I put together, between the UMC, the varmint round, the match, and the different weights, the 69 grain Remington Premier Match and the 77 grain are both that bright green strip, carrying the most energy. Now, 223 match, probably not something you're going to be hunting with, but again, sometimes the numbers are not what you might assume in your head. But hey, take a look at these numbers. 223, 30-06, like I said. Let me know which ones are your favorites and which ones have you found to work well in the rigs that you have. Like I said at the beginning of the video, normally when I answer you guys, when you ask me certain questions, I'm going to say the one that groups best for you. For example, the video that came out tonight while I'm sitting here talking was about a 30-06. I tested 6 different types of ammo. The very first one I tested, it did not do well. Like, had a group over 2 inches. It would be easy to assume, oh man, this 30-06 just a piece of junk. Well, guess what? I tested 5 more, and those next ones, I found 3 or 4 that were well under an inch group. So, test and see what happens in your rig. Don't give up. Yeah. But, all that being said, let's wrap it up. Doesn't matter which one you pick. Yes, it does. Depends on what you're trying to do. Depends what your rig likes. And there's a lot of FUDD lore. I'm going to quit rambling. Another one that I get a lot is, you don't know what you're talking about, man. People tell me that the projectile speeds up after it leaves the muzzle. And people say, you're not factoring in enough time for that projectile to increase in speed. It's not getting faster. The second it leaves the barrel, it's slowing down. But that's another piece of FUDD lore. Another piece of FUDD lore is people telling you that you have to get your scope right onto the barrel. FUDD lore. But hey, we could have a whole video series on FUDD lore. I just wanted to do some quick calculations on some common stuff, show you guys the numbers, what it looks like. I really like to do my own numbers, and I don't like taking what other people say to the bank until I've actually studied it myself. And I did all these numbers. So pretty cool for me, in my mind, just to run through this, especially the 223. I've never really looked at it in this detail from this perspective. But hey, I'm going to quit rambling. Again, let me know what your favorite is and why, and what your rig likes. Appreciate y'all. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll see you guys on the next one.